If you're a Buffalo Bills fan or just a football enthusiast, you probably already know that this team has a history full of ups and downs. But what if I told you that the franchise's early years, from its founding until 1970, hold secrets and curiosities that few people know about? The Bills were born during a time of great changes in football when the AFL, American Football League, challenged the NFL's dominance. Before becoming the team we know today, they went through moments of glory, unexpected championships, and also periods of hardship. In this video, we're going to dive into the past and uncover 10 fascinating facts about the Buffalo Bills that help explain how this team became one of the most passionate in the NFL. You'll learn about everything from the origin of the name Bills to their transition to the NFL in 1970. Oh, and there's even a story involving one of the most iconic players in football history, O.J. Simpson. So, you know the drill. Leave a like to support the channel, subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any new videos. Now, let's travel back in time and discover the origins of the Buffalo Bills. Number 1. The origin of the name Buffalo Bill. Every great franchise has a story behind its name, and the Buffalo Bills are no exception. But have you ever wondered where this name came from and why it was chosen? Before the team we know today, Buffalo had already been home to other professional football teams, including the Buffalo All-Americans and the Buffalo Bisons in the 1920s. However, when the city was awarded a new franchise in the AFL in 1960, it needed a strong and iconic name. The name was selected through a fan contest, and the winner was Buffalo Bills, inspired by none other than William Frederick Cody, better known as Buffalo Bill. He was a famous 19th-century explorer and buffalo hunter, a true legend of the Wild West. The idea was that the team would embody the fearless and adventurous spirit of this historical figure. Interestingly, this wasn't the first Buffalo team to use the name. In the 1940s, a team called the Buffalo Bills played in the All-America Football Conference, AAFC. However, when the league merged with the NFL in 1950, the team ceased to exist. Despite this, the name remained popular, and when the new AFL team was founded, fans revived it. With a name that paid tribute to a legendary figure, the Buffalo Bills were ready to write their own history in professional football. And as we'll see in the following topics, that history began with an immediate impact in the AFL. Number 2. The AFL era and the founding of the franchise. The Buffalo Bills were born during a revolutionary time in professional football. In 1959, a group of businessmen decided to create a rival league to the NFL, called the American Football League, AFL, with the goal of expanding the sport and challenging the dominance of the established league. Among these investors was Ralph Wilson, a businessman from Detroit, who purchased the rights to a new franchise in Buffalo. Thus, in 1960, the Buffalo Bills officially took the field for the first time. Unlike the NFL, which was already well established, the AFL focused on a more dynamic style of play, emphasizing explosive offenses and aggressive marketing to attract fans. Buffalo, a city deeply passionate about sports, quickly embraced the team, and the Bills became one of the most stable franchises in the new league. In their early years, the team was still searching for its identity. They played their home games at War Memorial Stadium, a small but iconic venue known as the Rock Pile. Though it lacked luxury, the stadium was the Bills' home until 1972 and witnessed many historic moments. One of the biggest challenges for the Bills in their early years was finding a head coach who could turn them into a competitive team. In 1962, Lou Saban was hired and brought discipline and strategy to the team, laying the foundation for the success that would follow in the coming years. The Bills' early years in the AFL were not easy, but the team soon began to dominate the league. Over the next few seasons, Buffalo would become one of the strongest teams in the AFL, winning championships and building a passionate fan base that continues to thrive today. Number 3. The team's first idols. Every team needs idols to build its identity and win over fans, and the Buffalo Bills were no exception. In the 1960s, while the AFL was still growing, Buffalo began establishing its reputation with players who left an everlasting mark on the franchise's history. One of the first great names was Jack Kemp, a quarterback who joined the team in 1962. Kemp had already played for other AFL teams, but it was in Buffalo that he became a legend. With a powerful arm and unquestionable leadership, he led the Bills to 2 AFL championships and was named the league MVP in 1965. He wasn't just a great player, he was also a strategist on the field, a quality that later led him to a successful political career. Another essential figure was Cookie Gilchrist, a dominant running back who became one of the team's first stars. Gilchrist was an absolute powerhouse on the field, combining brute strength with impressive speed. In 1962, he rushed for over 1,000 yards, helping establish the Bills' running game as one of the most feared in the AFL. On defense, the standout player was Mike Stratton, a linebacker known for his intelligence and physical toughness. He was responsible for one of the most iconic moments in Bills history during the 1960s, the legendary hit heard "Round the World." This occurred during the 1964 AFL Championship game, when Stratton delivered a devastating tackle on Keith Lincoln of the San Diego Chargers, completely shifting the momentum of the game and helping Buffalo secure its first championship. These players were the first heroes of the franchise, and their performances helped turn the Bills into an AFL powerhouse. But the team's greatest glory was still on the horizon. Number 4. The 2 AFL championships, 1964 and 1965. Before the Buffalo Bills became synonymous with Super Bowl appearances in the 1990s, they were already a dominant force in the American Football League, AFL. In 1964 and 1965, the Bills ruled the league, winning back-to-back championships in what remains the franchise's most successful era before the AFL-NFL merger. In the 1964 season, Buffalo finished with an impressive 12-2 record, securing the best record in the AFL. Led by head coach Lou Saban, the team had a highly efficient offense and a suffocating defense known as the Hit Men. This defensive unit overwhelmed opponents, shutting down some of the league's best offenses. In the AFL Championship game, the Bills faced the San Diego Chargers and delivered a near-flawless performance, winning 20-7 to claim the first championship in franchise history. The success didn't stop there. In 1965, the Bills proved their dominance was no fluke, once again controlling the league. They finished the regular season with a 10-3-1 record, earning another shot at the Chargers in the AFL title game. This time, Buffalo was even more dominant, completely shutting out San Diego in a 23-0 victory. With this win, the Bills became back-to-back AFL champions, solidifying themselves as the league's best team at the time. These championships were a turning point for the Bills, proving that the team could compete at the highest level and laying the foundation for future success. The victories also played a crucial role in cementing Buffalo's passionate fan base, creating a winning identity that fans still carry with pride today. However, as the 1960s came to an end, new challenges awaited the Bills, and the team was about to face tougher times ahead. Number 5. The first stadium and the home of the Bills. Before the Buffalo Bills moved to Rich Stadium, now Highmark Stadium, in 1973, their first home was a modest but historic venue, War Memorial Stadium, also known as the Rock Pile. Built in 1937, War Memorial Stadium was originally designed for baseball and was later adapted for football. With a capacity of around 46,000 fans, it wasn't the most modern or comfortable venue, but it quickly became an iconic place for Bills fans. The nickname Rock Pile came from the stadium's rugged appearance, resembling a massive concrete and brick structure. It had uneven bleachers, cramped locker rooms, and an aging infrastructure that started to show wear and tear over time. Despite these limitations, War Memorial Stadium became a fortress for the Bills during the 1960s. It was in this stadium that Buffalo won its AFL championships in 1964 and 1965, and many longtime fans still recall the electric atmosphere of game days there. The proximity of the stands to the field made the crowd noise deafening, creating an intimidating environment for opposing teams. However, after the AFL-NFL merger in 1970, it became clear that War Memorial Stadium no longer met the standards of the newly expanded league. The Bills needed a larger and more modern facility to keep up with the growth of the NFL. Thus, in the early 1970s, plans were set in motion for the construction of Rich Stadium, marking the end of an era at War Memorial. Even though the Bills haven't played there in decades, War Memorial Stadium remains alive in the memories of fans as the place where the team was born and achieved its first moments of glory. Number 6. Jack Kemp, the heart of the team. If the Buffalo Bills became a powerhouse in the AFL during the 1960s, much of the credit goes to one man, Jack Kemp. He wasn't just the team's quarterback, he was the leader who inspired the entire organization both on and off the field. Kemp arrived in Buffalo in 1962, after being released by the San Diego Chargers. Desperately in need of a reliable quarterback, the Bills seized the opportunity and claimed Kemp off waivers for just $100. It turned out to be one of the best bargains in franchise history. Kemp quickly took command of the offense, helping turn the Bills into one of the AFL's best teams. He wasn't the most naturally gifted quarterback in terms of athletic ability, but he made up for it with football intelligence, leadership, and an uncanny ability to perform under pressure. His connection with players like Elbert Dubinion and Cookie Gilchrist made Buffalo's offense one of the most effective in the league. But Kemp wasn't just a locker room leader. He was the driving force behind Buffalo's back-to-back AFL championships in 1964 and 1965. His performance helped propel the Bills to the top of the league, and in 1965, he was named AFL MVP, cementing his status as one of the greatest players of the era. After retiring from football in 1969, Kemp took an unconventional path for a former athlete. He entered politics. He became a respected congressman and even ran for vice president of the United States in 1996. His impact extended far beyond football, but for Bills fans, he will always be remembered as the great leader who brought glory to the franchise in the 1960s. With Kemp at the helm, the Bills made history. But major changes were on the horizon, and the biggest one came in 1970, with the merger of the AFL and NFL. Number 7. The transition to the NFL in 1970. The 1960s were defined by an intense rivalry between the AFL and the NFL, two leagues competing for players, audiences, and recognition. But in 1970, this battle came to an end with the merger of the two leagues, creating the modern NFL as we know it today. For the Buffalo Bills, this transition was a true turning point. Until then, the Bills had been one of the AFL's most dominant teams, winning back-to-back championships and boasting a strong roster. However, the newly merged NFL presented unexpected challenges. Buffalo now played in the American Football Conference, AFC, facing well-established teams from the former NFL, such as the Pittsburgh Steelers, Miami Dolphins, and Oakland Raiders. The impact was immediate. Buffalo went from being a winning team to one of the worst in the league. The Bills struggled with the retirement of key players, financial difficulties, and the challenge of competing against franchises that had decades of experience in the NFL. Their first season in the new league, 1970, was a disaster. The Bills finished with a 3-10-1 record, placing last in the AFC East. Beyond struggles on the field, the team also faced off-field issues. War Memorial Stadium was no longer suitable for NFL standards, and securing a new stadium became a top priority for the franchise. Despite these early struggles, the Bills had one key piece that would change the team's future: O.J. Simpson, the first overall pick in the 1969 NFL Draft. But before diving into his impact, it's important to understand how this selection happened and why it was so significant for the franchise's future. Number 8. The 1969 Draft, O.J. Simpson's arrival. If there was a single moment that symbolized hope for the Buffalo Bills in the late 1960s, it was the 1969 NFL Draft, when the team held the first overall pick and selected one of the greatest talents in football history, O.J. Simpson. At the time, Simpson was simply the biggest star in college football. Playing for USC, University of Southern California, he won the 1968 Heisman Trophy, putting up jaw-dropping stats and earning a reputation as one of the most dynamic running backs the sport had ever seen. For a team like the Bills, coming off multiple losing seasons and in desperate need of a superstar to rebuild the franchise, Simpson seemed like the perfect choice. However, his arrival in Buffalo wasn't smooth. Shortly after being drafted, Simpson demanded a record-breaking salary of $650,000 over 5 years, an unheard-of amount at the time. The Bills, desperate for an impact player, ultimately gave in, signing him to the biggest contract in football history up to that point. Despite the hype, Simpson's early years in Buffalo were challenging. The Bills' offensive line struggled, and he was unable to showcase his full potential. However, as the team improved its offensive scheme in the early 1970s, Simpson blossomed into a legend, shattering records and bringing Buffalo back into the national spotlight. The O.J. Simpson draft pick marked the beginning of a new era for the Bills. Even though the team struggled during its transition to the NFL, having a generational talent like Simpson gave fans renewed hope that better days were ahead. But before those brighter days, Buffalo would still endure difficult times in the late 1960s, nearly pushing the franchise to the brink. Number 9. The difficult times of the late 1960s. After their peak in 1964 and 1965, when the Buffalo Bills won back-to-back AFL championships, no one expected the team to decline so quickly. But that's exactly what happened in the second half of the decade, a period of struggles that nearly sank the franchise. One of the main reasons for this downfall was the aging roster. Key players like Jack Kemp began to suffer injuries and could no longer perform at the same high level. In 1968, Kemp sustained a shoulder injury that effectively ended his career as Buffalo's starting quarterback. In addition, the team faced serious financial issues. The AFL and NFL were engaged in a bidding war for players, causing salaries to skyrocket. For a small market team like Buffalo, staying financially competitive was a major challenge. The Bills struggled to attract top talent through the draft or free agency, leading to a weakened roster. The impact on the field was clear. After their championship years, the Bills finished the 1966, 1967, and 1968 seasons with losing records, never coming close to competing for another AFL title. In 1968, they hit rock bottom, posting the worst record in the league, 1-12-1. However, there was a silver lining. This failure secured Buffalo the first overall pick in the 1969 draft, which they used to select O.J. Simpson. Even with Simpson, the Bills' rebuild would take time. The AFL-NFL merger in 1970 only added to their challenges, and the team would continue to struggle before becoming competitive again. However, despite these difficult years, this era in Bills history is filled with rare and little-known curiosities that shaped the future of the franchise. Number 10. Rare curiosities and little-known facts. The early years of the Buffalo Bills were filled with incredible stories, but some fascinating details have been lost over time. Here are a few little-known facts about the franchise between its founding and 1970. The Buffalo Bills almost had a different name. When the team was founded, Buffalo Bills won a fan contest. However, some owners wanted a more traditional name and considered calling the team the Buffalo Lakers, a reference to the Great Lakes near the city. Fortunately, the idea was rejected, and the iconic Bills name remained. The Bills' first-ever game had a blackout. In 1960, during their AFL debut against the New York Titans, now the New York Jets, a power outage at Polo Grounds in New York delayed the game for several minutes. The Bills lost, but the unusual incident made their first official game a memorable one. Lou Saban, the championship-winning coach, quit the team twice. Lou Saban led the Bills to their 1964 and 1965 AFL championships, but in the middle of the 1966 season, he unexpectedly resigned to take a job at the University of Maryland. Years later, he returned as head coach in 1972, only to leave again in 1976 before finishing the season. O.J. Simpson didn't want to play for Buffalo. Before being drafted by the Bills in 1969, O.J. Simpson tried to force a trade to a Los Angeles team, hoping to stay in his hometown. He even stated that he would rather not play than go to Buffalo. In the end, a record-breaking contract convinced him to stay, and he went on to become the greatest running back in franchise history. The Bills' first win against an NFL team was against the Patriots. In 1968, Before the AFL-NFL merger, the leagues held inter-league exhibition games to compare talent levels. The Bills defeated the New England Patriots 16-13, proving they could compete with NFL teams. The early years of the Buffalo Bills were full of unforgettable moments, but this era was just the beginning of the franchise's journey in the NFL. The Buffalo Bills were born during a time of great change in professional football, rising through the AFL, winning championships, and facing major challenges upon entering the NFL. From the team's name origin to the arrival of O.J. Simpson, from the first star players to the iconic War Memorial Stadium, the years between 1960 and 1970 were essential in shaping the franchise's identity. Despite the struggles at the end of the 1960s, these early years laid the foundation for the team's future. Jack Kemp became a legend both on and off the field, the Bills' defense made history, and Simpson's arrival brought new hope. Even with the challenges of the AFL-NFL merger, Buffalo kept the passion of its fan base alive, a loyalty that remains one of the strongest in professional football today. But the Bills' story didn't stop there. After experiencing ups and downs in the following decades, the team reached glory in the 1990s, endured the heartbreak of 4 consecutive Super Bowl losses, and is now once again among the NFL's elite. However, it all started with those early years in the AFL, when Buffalo proved to the world that it was more than just another team. It was a franchise destined to leave its mark on NFL history. Now, we want to hear from you. Which of these Bills' early history facts surprised you the most? Drop a comment below. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss more content like this. See you in the next video.